Hi hello learners, welcome to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for following us. Thank you for watching all our tutorials. Today we are back with another juicy tutorial. This is the pattern that we're going to be using for the tutorial. So I've drafted out the pattern. It has been uploaded to the Handbag Construction class, and I'm going to talk about the Handbag Construction class shortly, but this is the pattern that we're going to be using. I'm using measurements of 7.5 inches by 11.6 inches. Also, this is the inner gusset. I'm going to be using a facing gusset construction method for this bag. So this is the stripe, so it's going to have a zipper in between, and this is the handle for the bag. So these are the patterns that we're going to be using for the bag. If you are interested in learning how we came about these patterns, you can get the video tutorial by following the link in the description. You can as well join the handbag construction class. Speaking about the handbag construction class, the handbag construction class is a 6-week intensive training on structured bag making. You are taught how to assign measurements and create designs on your own by exposing you to the basic techniques and methods to making various designs of bags. For the first 2 weeks of the training, you are taught how to manipulate gussets, use various gusset designs. You are able to make paper prototype bags just like this ones, and once you've been able to design this on your own, we then take you further to making real structured bags. So this 6 weeks class is suitable for beginners and intermediates. So you go from imagining a bag in your head, drafting the patterns on papers, constructing it into paper prototypes, and then bringing it into real bags that people can then buy from you and carry. So if you're looking to step up your bag making game, then the handbag construction class is definitely for you. It's a 6-week class and it is purely online. It's a class that you can take from anywhere that you are in the world. It is explanatory. There is also a support group whereby you can ask questions and seek support. You have assignments to ensure that you're understanding the concept. And in order to join the handbag construction class, you can find the link in the description. I would love you to be a part of the next course because I'll be willing to interact with you and be in my personal class training with you. See you in the handbag construction class. So these are the stiffeners that I will be using for the bag. Okay, so this is the inner gusset. These are the handles. This is what I'll be using to reinforce the handles for the bag. So I'm using double-faced faux leather. These are the main panels. So this is the front panel, the back panel, and the base. And I've also cut out the bag fabric for this bag. So I'll be using this black faux leather. It's also a patterned skein faux leather. So this is for the front, for the back. This is for the base. This is for the long handle, right? So we're going to be having a shoulder strap. This is for the inner gusset. So this is the pattern. This goes for this. So I will not be bringing out this until I've gummed the stiffener to the bag fabric, that's to the leather, and that's when I would now go ahead and bring out the zip part in the middle. So it's a bag with a zipper, and this is for the handle. This is the pattern for the handle, and this is how it was cut. This is the stiffener I'll be using. Like I said, I'll be using a double-faced leather to stiffen it. So it's cut halfway, right? So you bring this here and then cut this other end. So if you can see right here, that was the partition line where the handle pattern was used to cut it. So basically that is all that will be going into your tutorial. The next thing I'm going to do right now is to gum the bag fabrics to the stiffeners. I've cut out the lining. I've also gummed the parts of the bag, and this is the front of the bag. I've gummed it with this black faux leather like I showed you. I've also done that for the two sides, so you can see the two panels. I've gummed them to the stiffeners that I'm going to be using, just like I showed you. This is the base of the bag, right? I've also done that. Then remember the after covering up the handle of the bag, the part of the handle that is not going to be stitched to the body of the bag altogether, you're going to line that part of the handle. And in the case of this handle, it is the part where we have the shape. So you're going to line that aspect of the handle, and you're going to allow the lining to extend into the both parts of the handle. That's the top part that is going to be folded and the part that is going to lie on the main panel of the bag. Then you make a stitch because you're not going to be able to stitch that when you're stitching to the body of the bag. So you stitch the lining to that part of the handle. So I'm fixing the bag fabric, the leather, so that it folds very well, because the gum was not sticking very well, was not allowing the leather to stick very well to the stabilizer, to the double face leather that I used as the stiffener. Okay, so you just make this shallow stitch just to stitch that part of the bag, and then you trim off the lining. So trim it off so that it's not seen outside. The lining is not being seen outside. So you're going to trim it very well. So you can see what we have here. So that's how you're going to do it. You're going to do it for the second side as well. So I've done the two. Then the next thing is you're going to stitch the part of the handle that is going to be held. So just bring it together and stitch it. Okay, once you're done, you can put the tube into the handle that way, or you can decide not to use a tube and leave it this way. It's going to work. So in this video, I'm going to be using the two methods, the one without tube and the one with tube. So remember the part that we marked on the pattern that we are going to put the handle. So you use that part to measure out where the handle is going to stay on the bag. You can as well do another new measurement on the pattern on the main panel. So you take a new measurement on the main panel, since you already know the measurements you want to use. So if you don't want to use the one on the pattern, since you already know the measurements, you can take it on the main panel of the bag. So once you've placed it, ensure it is straight, and then you sew downwards. So you stitch the second side as well. So once you're done with that, you place the second part of the handle on the main panel again. So you're also going to use the pattern, or you take a new measurement. So measure it out again to get where the handle is going to stay. Okay, so for the second handle, you fix the first handle. For the second handle, I've also lined it and I've also sewn it. So this is the tube that I'm going to be using, the transparent tube that we measured while we were cutting the pattern for the handle, and I'm already inserting it into it. So it's only going to be in that part that I've sewn alone. It's not going to extend beyond there, but you can make it extend beyond there if you want. I just don't want it to be seen outside, and this is what it now looks like. So I've inserted the tube into the handle, and next thing is we're going to place it on the main panel of the bag. So you go over with your measurements again, right? So here I'll be using the measurement that I have on the second one. You can as well use the measurement on your pattern. It's going to be the same. I'm just showing you various ways by which you can go about the measurement.
Okay, so once you're done with the first part, you also do the second one as well, and then you take the measurement to be sure that it is accurate. So once you're done sewing the handle, the next thing is that you're going to take the base of the bag and you're going to join it. So remember the line that we made on the pattern that the base is going to be attached to. That's the line that you use. So ensure that the line is well aligned. You can use your super glue to hold it in place so that you can sew it without it moving around. Then this leather is pretty sticky, so I'm trying to use a lubricant, machine oil, to oil the surface of the leather so that the machine can move freely without causing damage on it. Remember, it's a full leather. Alright, so the first line that we measured, so that line is the one that you're going to use to bend the base. Okay, so the first line is to stitch, the second line is to bend. And you can see what it looks like, that a part of your main panel is now a part of the base. So for the second one as well, that's the second side of the bag, we do the same thing. So I'm applying gum so that it stays in place and allows me to sew without moving around. So I'm going to stitch that. So stitch the base to the main panel. So what you're going to have is going to be exactly as what you have on your pattern by the time you're done. So I'm cutting off the loose threads and the excess leather around the parts that I don't need them. So we're also going to bend this one following the line. Okay, so you can see that our bag is forming up now. Next thing is the gusset for the bag. So ensure that as you sew it, you're trimming off the loose threads. As you're sewing, you're trimming off every loose threads. We are using twine thread. It's preferably that you use your lighter or whatever fire source that you can, that will not damage your leather. So we're also going to put the bag seat. So you take your measurement for the bag seat and then you put the bag seat on it. So usually I use 1 inch and ½ inch, 1 inch, ½ inch. That's 1 inch from the side and ½ inch from the front and from the back panel. That's from the base, the part where the base is connected to the main panels. So ensure that you're covering up the studs, the metals of the bag seat. So you can use your paper to cover it or use leather, the leather extension. So this is the lining that we are going to be using for the gusset, and I've also marked the parts where the zip is going to be staying. I've marked it on the lining with a pen, and I've also cut out this stiffener to interface it so that I can use it to fold. So all these things now were done with the pattern. So you use the pattern to cut all of this out. So once you place your inner gusset pattern on your lining, you mark out the point where the zip is going to get to be. Just mark it with your pen. Then you also cut a stiffener using the same pattern and cut out that stiffener. By the time you cut out the stiffener, you place it on the lining following the exact pen mark that you made. So you can see me opening it and trying to set it because I'm following a particular pen mark that I have marked on the lining. So the interfacing has to follow the exact mark you have on your lining. Then you apply your gum. You apply your gum so that you can fold. So once you're done with that, you have to slit. So you cut the middle part. So watch closely how I am cutting the edge. I had to make a V cut around the edge, then a straight line in the middle that allows there to be enough space, enough velvet material, the lining, to fold on the interfacing. So you can see the V mark. That was the first one that I folded. So the V mark is the first one that I folded. Then the other part, you fold it over the interfacing. So for the interfacing of this particular lining, I'm using the ad stay or collar stay that tailors use for the collars of their clothes. That's what I'm using for the interfacing here. I didn't want it to be too thick. It's just for it to fold neatly. So when you're cutting your lining as well, aside using your pattern to cut it, ensure there is enough allowance on the edges. Ensure that there is enough allowance on the edges of your lining, because your lining is not going to be lining the inner gusset alone. It's also going to be lining the stripe. So I've also folded and brought out the zip part of the inner gusset. That's the one with the leather. So I'm fixing the zip head on the zip. So fixing the zip head on the zip clothes, and then you place it. So place the zip in the middle, just the way it's supposed to be. So place it carefully. So the same way that I folded the lining in the middle to bring out the zip part, that was the same way I did for this leather as well. Because I know I didn't do that on camera, but I showed you the way I did the lining. So that's how you do for this as well. So once you're done with that, you place the zip first. So first position the zip. Ensure that it is straight, it is not gallopy. Ensure that it is very straight and firm. And then remember that I've already applied gum before placing the zip. So the gum holds the zip to the inner gusset. So you're going to cut off the excess. So apply your gum on the zip and on the inner gusset. And then you're going to do so for the lining as well. So you place the lining on the main gusset. So I've marked the midpoints of the lining and the midpoints of the main gusset. So I'm going to start from the midpoint and carefully place it. For the second side as well, start from the midpoint and arrange it. Carefully place it all through. You can see that the lining is wider than the leather. Okay, you have to leave excess allowance on the lining. Then you stitch round around the zip area. So you stitch round around the zip area. So this stitch holds the gusset to the zip and also to the lining of the bag. So this is what we have here. So I'm going to open up the lining and I'm going to use my pins to hold them together because I want to sew on the edges. So I'll be sewing the stripe to the inner gusset. So I'm going to start from the midpoint of the top. So the midpoint of the inner gusset and the midpoint, the top midpoint of the stripe. So I'll start sewing from there and I'll sew round. So you're sewing on the edges of the paper board. You're not sewing just on the leather, you're sewing on the edges of the paper board. So I'm making slits on the curved parts of the stripe so that I can sew easily, so that it's easy for me to sew. So if you watch closely, I'm sewing on the edges of the paper board. Same thing for the stripe as well. Your sewing has to be on the edges of the paper board. So I pinned down the stripe to the inner gusset so that it's easy for me to sew. So instead of using clips, I used pins. You can use clips if you have. So what I'm removing from there are just pins. Done sewing the stripe to the inner gusset. So I'm just trying to straighten up the corners. So I'll just try and create tiny slits around the corners. That's the curved side, so that there's allowance for the stitches to breathe. So it's just not folding at that end. So I'm also going to make the lining, I'm going to fold it more and still pin it down so that I can sew the D-ring holder. So the part that is going to hold the long handle strap, that's the D-ring and the D-ring holder. So I'm going to sew it on the inner gusset. So ensure that you're not sewing on your lining, just on the inner gusset alone. And the main reason why I didn't sew the D-ring before sewing the lining and the stripe is because of space, right? So if I had sewn the D-ring first, it will obstruct me from being able to sew the stripe because the space around there is not much. So I had to manage that space and ensure that the D-ring is not getting into the way of my stitches. That's why I'm doing it last. So you just sew your D-ring. So ensure that you're sewing it very close to the top where your slant started, where the slant of your gusset started. So that way you are sure that the D-ring is closer to the top of the bag. So in case that your measurement is longer, you're not using 7.5 inches as the height of your bag. Let's say you're using 9 inches as the height of your bag. So you just ensure that the D-ring is closer to the top, around where the slant started. Okay, so for the second side as well, I'm going to open the lining up very well so that I don't sew on the lining by mistake. So you can use glue to hold the D-ring holder to the main panel of the bag before you stitch it so that it just stays in place instead of moving around. You can do that. I'm trying to shift the zipper up so that it does not disturb me. Then I'll sew the D-ring holder to the inner gusset. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to trim the excess leather that we have on the part where we join the inner gusset to the stripe. So that excess leather, I'm going to trim it to be very close to the stitches. So once you're done stitching that, you're going to gum the lining back to it. So gum the lining back to the inner gusset. Ensure that it is well aligned. Then you're going to apply gum on the stripe. So you apply gum on the stripe round as well as on the excess part of the lining, the excess you have on the lining. So the wrong side of the stripe, that's where I'm applying gum now, and on the lining as well, because we are going to line the stripe with the excess lining from the inner gussets. So you fold the lining over the stripe. So at the curved side, you may have to pleat the lining. At the curved side, you may have to pleat the lining. It's fine, you still trim it off. Okay, so the pleated lining, you trim it off, and then the excess lining. So the lining does not have to get to the edge of the stripe. So you have to trim off the lining. The ones close to the edge, you trim it off. Then the pleated ones as well, you also trim the pleats.
So we're going to be doing a pocket frame, right? A zip frame, and this is what we're going to be using. So this is total of 1.5 inches. Then here is half inch, here is half inch, and in the middle here is half inch as well. So this half inch in the middle I've also divided into two. Okay, so I divided
1.5 inches into 2, then measured 0.25 to the right and 0.25 to the left to give me ½ inch that is going to be in the middle. So that is this line that you see here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a shape. So I'll just use the cover of a bottle, right? Cover of a Ragolis bottle, water bottle, to just give it a shape. So once I have that shape, I'll try and see if I can give this a shape as well. Then this as well. Alright, so this is what I have right here. I'll fold this into 2 and then cut out. Okay, so I'll also cut out this middle part. We're not going to need that. So here we go. So we have the frame and I will use this leather to cover it up. So take the lining for the bag of which you have used the pattern to cut, and then the zip frame that we made. So you're going to place the zip frame on the lining and just make it to be 2.5 inches from the top of the lining. So you're going to sew round on the frame. So I'm sewing on the perimeter. That's the outward perimeter. So I'll sew round just to hold the frame down to the lining for the bag. Then I'm going to cut off the middle part where the zip is going to be. So I'll just cut that off. So trim it in such a way that the lining is not seen on the outside. So you have to trim it very well such that your lining is not being seen after you fixed your zip. So once you have the zip frame in place, the next thing is to do the zip pocket. So for the zip pocket, you're going to place your zip on the top part of the zip pocket. So you stitch it that way. Cut off the excess zip. And then you sew the zip to the second side. So you place the zip pocket underneath the zip frame and then you stitch. So I'll be stitching the downward part first. You can see that the pocket is facing towards the up side because I'm sewing the down part of the pocket. So in order to sew the up part of the pocket, I'm going to return the pocket downwards. But before then, remember to put your zipper so that you do not forget and seal up the whole pocket and you realize you did not put the zipper. So after putting the zipper, I've returned the zip pocket downwards because I want to sew the upper part. So before I sew the upper part, I'll just seal the pockets on the side. Seal it on the second side as well. Then I can now go ahead to sew the top part. So I'll sew the side. Now I'm going to be following the inner frame. Remember that when we were sewing the zip frame to the lining, to the main panel lining, we sewed on the perimeter of the outer frame. But to sew it on the zip, you're going to sew on the inner frame. So the part of the frame that is closest to the lining, that's the part that you're stitching on. So here's our pocket. You can see our zip pocket. Then we're also going to have a slip pocket. So I'll be using this leather. It's a very soft leather, by the way. That's what I'll be using as the slip pocket. And I'll be folding it into 2 for thickness. Then I'll also leave a small allowance to allow me fold it and turn it inside out. So I'll top stitch on the top part of the slip pocket. Then I'll go ahead to place it on the lining at 2.5 inches from the top as well. You can use 2.5 inches, you can use 3 inches. And this is because this bag is a bag built with a zipper pocket. So if you open the bag, you may not quickly be able to access the pocket. So the pocket has to go lower. That's why we are using 2.5 inches to 3 inches from the top of the lining. So I'm going to sew the slip pocket. Remember when you're sewing your slip pocket, you sew on the side, the base, the bottom part, and then the second side, and that's all. So the top part is where the slip is. That's the slip access. So we have our lining now, and the next thing is to place it on the main panel of the bag. So we are going to gum that together. So here I've applied gum on the main panel and as well as on the lining. So you apply gum on your lining for strength, and then you go ahead to align the lining, place it very well on the main panel. Ensure that the lining is not in excess. So if you use your pattern to cut your lining, you reduce it a little bit, or you just use the exact lining on the pattern, and then when you place it on your main panel, you can then trim so that you get the accurate lining for your bag. So once you're done placing the lining on the main panel of the bag, next thing is to fix the gusset to the bag. So to fix the gusset, you're going to start from the midpoint. So I'm going to just align the shape of the stripe to the shape of the main panel of the bag. So once I find that the shape is aligned, I can start anywhere. So the most important thing is that your shape is aligned. The shape of the stripe must match the shape of the main panel of the bag. If you're using your flatbed sewing machine, just like as I am using in this video to make your bag, you may have to squeeze some parts of your bag so that you can get your stitches right and neat. But if you are using your cylinder bed, it is going to go smoothly because that is what it is built for. So your flatbed can also sew it. You may just have to squeeze some part of the bag in order for you to be able to let it, sew. Just as you can see me doing this video. See that some part of the bag has been pressed. You end the stitches or the stitch, you end it where you started making the bag from, and you short it top stitch and burn all loose thread. So here we have the bag. This is what it looks like. So I'm going to bring out the shape. Okay, so all the deformities that we made while trying to sew it, I'm going to realign it back. So bring out the shape back, straighten it up. And yes, that's the simple process that went into the making of this bag. You can see our zip pocket. You can see the zip pocket. You can see the slip pocket as well. And then the zip also. So you go ahead to make the long shoulder strap.
This is the outcome, so let me know what you think. You have the long adjustable shoulder strap as well. This allows you to carry the bag as a crossbody. I love the outcome, and I think the only things I didn't like was the fact that because I used my flatbed sewing machine to sew it, so the paper boards I used, they got squeezed before I finally got this result. But if I'd used a cylinder bed sewing machine, that's the other machine, to finish it, I would have gotten something really nice, so all these wrinkles and all will not be there. So this is the handle with the tube inside, and this is the handle without the tube. Okay, so you can see this, and you can see this, so sturdy, right? So this is the essence of putting tube in your handle. You can see the difference between the two handles. I don't know if that is very clear to you, if you can see the difference, but this is the bag that we made. And so let me know if you'll be practicing. If you ever did practice, kindly send us a picture, let us repost, let us cheer you up. I'll be looking forward to yours. Catch you. Take care, guys.